Hi, I'm Amy. This is House of Nash Eats, and today we are making homemade pizza dough. So to start making our pizza, first we're going to want to get our oven preheating. Even though we still have to let our dough rise, you want the hottest possible oven you can get at home. So give it a good half an hour to an hour to preheat with a pizza stone in it if you have one, just so you get the best pizza. So to get started on our pizza dough, let's add 1.5 cups of warm water to a large bowl. It doesn't need to be hot. You don't want to kill the yeast, but just nice and warm. I just get it out of my tap. And then a little bit of sugar, which the yeast will feed on. And then we're going to do 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast. And I'll include a link to the recipe and all the ingredient amounts below. And I'm using active dry yeast, so it's going to need about 5 minutes to proof until it's foamy. If you're using instant yeast, you could just go right ahead with the recipe and add the other ingredients. Okay, so we're going to let that sit for about 5 minutes until it's foamy on top. So now that our yeast is nice and foamy, it's been about 5 minutes, we're going to add the olive oil and salt. And then we're going to add between about 3.5 and 4 cups of flour. We'll start with a lower amount, and if we feel like the dough needs more while we're kneading it, we'll add the rest of it. And this is bread flour. You could use all-purpose flour, but bread flour gives you a chewier crust with a better texture. So I really like using bread flour for pizza dough. So we'll start with that much. I'm going to use my dough hook to bring this all together and knead it. You could do this by hand. It'll take a little bit longer, more like 6 or 7 minutes to knead it by hand. It'll be 5 minutes once it starts coming together using a mixer. Okay, so I'm just pausing to show you. It's starting to come together in a ball, but you can see that there's still dough on the sides. By the time it's done kneading, the dough should pretty much clear and clean the sides of the bowl. So now we're gonna go for about 5 minutes. Okay, so this is sticking to the bottom of the bowl quite a bit, so I'm gonna add a little bit more flour so it doesn't stick quite so much, and then keep kneading. And the difference can depend on the humidity, how you measured your flour, and so you just kind of have to watch and get a feel for it, but anywhere between that 3.5 and 4 cups is where you want it. Okay, this has been kneading for about 5 minutes, and it is nice and soft and just slightly sticky, but not too much. I can't get it off there. Going the wrong way. Okay, so you should be able to pull the dough out of the bowl. You can see the bowl's really clean, and it wants to stick just a little bit, but not too much. I can handle the dough without it sticking too much to my hands. It's nice and smooth and soft, and that's where you want it to be. So now we're just going to add a little oil to the bottom of the bowl and over our dough and just rub it around so it doesn't stick. And then we're going to cover it with plastic wrap and let it sit for about half an hour to 45 minutes at room temperature to rise until it doubles in size. Okay, so our dough has risen beautifully, and we're just going to take the plastic wrap off, and you can divide it into smaller pizzas if you want to do personal individual sized pizzas and let everybody decorate, like top their own, or you could just do 2 or 3 larger pizzas. So I'm going to just pinch off some dough and throw down some flour on my surface. And I don't roll out my pizza dough. I just like to pat it and stretch it, or I'll let it hang and let gravity do the work so it stretches out. This lets it thin out more in the middle while keeping a thicker crust around the edges. You can do it however you want, thicker crust, thin crust. This dough is super versatile. Add a little more flour if it's sticking. If you take your rings off, you can try the whole punching thing or stretching it over your knuckles a little bit. I'm not good enough to toss it, but if you've got the skills, go for it. If your dough is too thick, especially in the middle, your pizza runs the risk of not cooking all the way through. And if you're having a hard time getting your dough to stretch out, it's the gluten in your dough. Just leave it alone for 5 minutes, let it rest. The dough will relax, and then you can stretch it out again. Okay, and when you're ready to put it into the oven, your oven should be preheated pretty much as high as it will go. I've got mine set at 500 degrees and it's been preheating for almost an hour now. I'm going to take a pizza peel and put my pizza dough onto the peel, and it should be able to slide around. That way I can just slide it in onto my pizza stone that's in my oven. If you don't have a pizza stone or a pizza peel like this, don't worry about it. You could do this right on a baking sheet and you'll still have really great pizza. The stone just gives it a little bit of more of a crispy edge and bottom, like you would get at a pizzeria. So now I'm going to top this with my favorite homemade pizza sauce. It's a no-cook, 5-minute or less sauce, and I'll link to it in the description below. This stuff is so good. It's got amazing flavor, and I like about 1/4 of a cup of sauce on my pizza. Spread it to the edges. You could also brush your crust with olive oil to get it crispy around the edge if you like that. And then top with some mozzarella cheese, and then any other toppings that you want. I'm keeping it simple and just doing pepperoni today because I love pepperoni, but you could do supreme, Canadian bacon and pineapple, whatever you like. Just be careful if you're topping it with a lot of toppings, it's going to have a harder time cooking all the way through, so keep that in mind. And if you're doing things like sausage or chicken, be sure it's all pre-cooked so that it doesn't come out raw, because it won't have a chance to cook in the oven. It'll just heat up. And this is going to bake for about 5 to 10 minutes in the oven until the crust is golden brown around the edges and the bottom is crispy underneath and the cheese is melted on top. So it's going to kind of depend on how big your pizzas are. So just watch it and you'll see when it's done. Okay, so my pizza is hot out of the oven. The cheese is melted, the crust is nice and brown around the edge. You can see it's done underneath. It's got a nice color to it. And we're ready to slice it and eat up. So I've got my pizza cutter. And you can hear the crispness of that crust. So pepperoni is my favorite topping. I love supreme, but pepperoni is kind of the classic that I always go for, even though my kids always want cheese. So I'm going to go ahead and have a bite. That's some mighty fine pizza. The sauce is fantastic, the crust is chewy, it's crisp on the bottom, it's cheesy, it's perfection. We have a pizza night tradition at our house every Friday night, and maybe it'll be a new one for you too. If you like this pizza dough recipe, be sure to like and subscribe to my channel, and let me know below in the comments what you would top your pizza with.